Hey Sun Space Sun, I'm Daisy Victoria and welcome to another video. Today we're going to make a dress inspired by the American Girl dolls. Now I grew up in the age of American Girl, which I know is still around, but I'm definitely in that age group that was super into American Girl dolls when I was a kid. My favorite was Kirsten. And I still have my Kirsten from very long ago. The inspiration for doing this cosplay was actually a cosplay group. So a bunch of us here in the greater Seattle area are doing an American Girl doll group for Emerald City Comic Con, and I decided to be Kirsten in her summer dress from Kirsten Saves the Day. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this dress, the choices that I'm making, the things that I'm doing the same and different and why, and then I'm going to go ahead and show you how I made it. So for Kirsten's summer dress, she has this blue and white striped fabric, which this is a striped fabric you see a lot in some of the Swedish paintings that depict this era. So this era, meaning Kirsten is from 1854, her story when she's 10 years old in her books. And Kirsten is from Sweden. She's an immigrant to the US in the 1850s. So on this dress, the blue is kind of like turquoise-ish, but not quite a turquoise. It's a very interesting shade of blue. And I decided that in my fabric, I would rather err on the bluer side than the greener or tealer side. So in looking for a fabric, I kept in mind that I was okay with having something that wasn't quite exactly this color if it was more on the bluer side, which is in fact what I ended up finding. And I like the fabric and I'm happy with it, so that's why I chose that one. I could have done exactly this dress, but due to a couple of factors, I decided to go with sort of a more like if Kirsten was more adult version of the dress. So reason number one being that I want to wear the dress again, and I think that if it's more of like an adult dress, like more of what someone my age would wear, then I'm more likely to wear it to other events than just this one convention. So it's multi-purpose. It doesn't have to be a Kirsten cosplay. It could just be a Victorian dress as well. And number two is that I actually ended up with a lot of stuff going on suddenly. So I got an interview, actually got a few interviews, but one was for the position and the company that I really wanted to work for. So all of my spare time I could possibly put into that prep went into that. So to make the project of this costume a lot easier, I decided to go with a standard pattern. It's a Laughing Moon pattern, and it's like a super comfy wrap dress, and it's got the look of this dress, just a more like grown-up version. Now I already had some red boots, so no problem there, as well as all the undergarments. And her hat is a straw hat, and it's got a black ribbon with some berries here. So for mine, I got a straw hat that's very similar, black ribbon, got some fake berries and leaves, and that was probably the easiest part of the outfit. So when I put this together, I did it pretty quickly, like within probably a few days total. So I'm going to show you what I filmed of making the dress, and then I have just a little bit of video footage at Emerald City Comic Con. Most of what I have is group photos, and I did take photos of the dress on my mannequin before I wore it as well. So I'm going to put all of that footage and photos that I do have in the end of the video so you can see how it looks. And you can not only see how this dress looks, but you can see how the whole group of American Girl dolls looks, because everyone looked amazing, and it was just like such a cool group to have so many American Girl dolls. And we had 3 Kirstens too, so I was a triplet. Pretty cool. All right, so I've cut out all the pieces for the dress. We're working on the instructions now for Laughing Moon number 118, which is this wrapper Victorian dress. This is listed as 1840s to 60s. We're trying to give it an 1850s feel since we are doing Kirsten from the American Girl collection. The most time-consuming part so far has been cutting out the pattern and taping it together. So the Laughing Moon pattern comes in A0 format, and I printed it on letter paper, so it's not like pre-formatted to letter. You have to print it as a poster and then, you know, put it together yourself. Like there's no marks on the pages to help you. So it did take a little bit of time, but I got it all together. Currently I'm going through the sewing instructions. The first step was to put the outer fabric and the lining together and stitch the darts in the front. You don't have to do darts. The instructions explain a few different ways you can do this dress. You can make it looser or less fitted. I chose to go ahead and do the darts. Now they give you a tip in here to stitch down the center of the darts. Now I have the lining and the fashion fabric together because I am just flat lining, so treating it as one fabric. And that's because I figured my fabric, which is a linen cotton blend, was a little bit sheer, and I just thought that it would give the whole dress a nice body if I went ahead and flatlined it. And it was really cheap muslin anyway, so it was only like a couple dollars more to flatline the whole dress versus line the bodice. So here we go, it's worth it. So for the darts, I don't know if you can see them super well on camera, but I drew the darts, I traced them from the pattern, and I have stitched down the center of each dart, and that is to hold the fabric together. Because if you fold fabric over like that and you try to sew the dart, it might stay perfectly together, but it might kind of shift around. So you might end up with more of one piece of fabric pinched together than the other. So if you stitch that line down the center of the dart, or where the dart's going to be, that will help to not have that happen. So as you can see, in the one that I have already stitched the darts, the other side of the front looks really nice. And here in the back, I've just sewn along the lines that I marked there. And that stitching helps make sure the fabric all goes the way it's supposed to. So I'm going to go ahead and sew the darts on the other side of the front piece. And then in the instructions, it goes through next how to do if you're making like a partial lining. And since I'm lining the whole thing, I am not going to worry about that yet. I'm going to end up moving on to the next step, which will be the pockets. So I'm going to do the pockets and then set up the bodice back, attach the skirt to that, and we're going to kind of go through this together and try to follow the instructions. I've now sewn the side seams together on the dress. So here you can see where the back with that pleated skirt attaches to the front piece. Now, as a note, I did have, it wasn't quite lined up, so I did put the pockets on exactly where the dots were on the pattern, and the back bodice was a little too long, so what I did was I just kind of made a tuck there at the seam to take up some of that extra, which was really, really good because it was too long-waisted for me anyway. So it's still bordering on too long-waisted, but it's much better, so that was meant to be. The next step in the instructions is to apply piping. So I have created this piping by cutting bias strips of my fabric and folding it over and putting this cording inside, and I sewed that with a zipper foot. As per the instructions, the piping is going to go around the armholes, and it's also going to go around the neckline. Okay, so moving along, I have done a few things. The dress is mostly sewn together body-wise. Here you can see the piping on the neckline. I did not sew it down on the edge because this is where it's going to be turned under, and I'm going to end up folding the piping into that. So there you go. The piping is on the sleeves, or the sleeve openings. So what I did was I sewed it right sides together along that armhole edge. So when the sleeves will be attached here, and then the piping will look like that. I am also working on the sleeves. So I am doing these very nice gathered sleeves. I have gathered them into the cuffs, and what I did was I gathered into one side of the cuff, and then I've ironed the cuff so that it folds over and then folds over again on itself. Now there's another version of the cuff which buttons, but I decided to make these so that they go over my hands, and that way I have a little bit less work to do because, let's be honest, I'm on a time crunch here. I also chose to do the little caps on the sleeves that you sometimes see in the 1850s fashion. So these are gonna go on there, and then sleeve will match up to that. There are two reasons I chose to do these. One is the most important reason, I just like them. Like, I think they're really cute. And two, because Kirsten's summer dress does have short sleeves, and I've chosen to make sort of the standard long sleeve dress. Once these are attached, they'll really mimic the short sleeves of Kirsten's dress. Additionally, I decided to pipe the edges of these sleeve pieces. So just like the neckline, I sewed the piping right sides together to the edge, and then I folded it in and ironed it. So most securely, I would like to hand stitch this down, but if I run out of time, it will still be finished. So I'm not going to do that yet. I'm going to go through the finishing of the gown first, and then that will be a final step if I have time. So what I'm going to do next is I will hand stitch these cuffs shut on the inside, and then I'm going to gather the sleeves. So I've sewn 2 rows of gathering stitches along the edge. I'm going to gather that to fit the sleeve cap or the mancharin, and then I'm going to sew those into the armholes. And then my dress will be in one piece and ready for finishing. Before I move along, I also want to note that I've started working on the belt. This is 4 layers of fabric, 2 fashion, 2 lining, and it's just sewn together. I clip the corners, and there is a place where I can turn it right side out. I'm kind of doing this concurrently with the dress because it is not a dependent task. This is independent of the dress itself. So we'll turn that and iron it and then stitch that opening closed, and it'll get a button on it. Okay, so we're rushing through a bazillion things this week that are not this project, but this project is still getting done. Let me show you the finishing touches. In the front, I've attached buttons and I've sewn buttonholes with my handy dandy buttonhole foot on my machine, and I've hemmed the bottom. I ended up hemming my skirt by about 4.5 inches. The pattern does say 3 inches, but I'm short and I knew I would need more, so for me 4.5 worked pretty well. And that's all sewn by machine. So what I have left to do now is just hand tack this down here around the neckline. So this is the piping, and that's simply so that it doesn't pop up when I wear it. And I can just tack it in a couple of strategic places. I don't have to tack the entire thing. It's just to hold it down. The belt also could take a button to button it shut, or a hook or something, but I'm thinking for simplicity and adjustability, I may just pin it shut with some straight pins, and then I'm gonna wear this over my petticoat at least. I do have all the other undergarments, so like the chemise, the corset, and the pantaloons. I'm going to have to do a quick change though to get to my cosplay group at Emerald City Comic Con, so we're gonna see what time I have, but petticoat for sure because it needs the skirt volume. And I'm pretty excited. I still have the hat to finish up. I've got to get my doll out of the box she's in and we're good to go. Thank you so much for joining me today and going on an adventure to be American Girl dolls. Do you have a favorite American Girl doll? Let me know who your favorite is in the comments. As always, I would love to see anything that you were inspired to make. You can find me on social media at Daisy Victoria. My website is daisyvictoria.com. And a special thank you to my patrons over on Patreon who help to enable me to continue doing all of this kind of cool stuff. I hope you guys have an absolutely magical day, and I'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye!